wife, Kathy, and I had been craving an adventurous getaway for months. The hustle and bustle of our city life had worn us down, and the prospect of escaping into the wilderness was too alluring to resist. After some research, we settled on a remote campsite deep in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains. This would be our first overnight camping trip in years, and we were both eager to rekindle the sense of adventure that defined our younger days. The drive to the campsite was a journey in itself. Winding roads led us further and further away from civilization, and the dense forest enveloped us in an eerie silence. We finally arrived at our destination, a small clearing nestled among ancient trees, with a serene river nearby. It seemed like the perfect spot to reconnect with nature. We spent the afternoon setting up our tent, gathering firewood, and preparing a hearty dinner over an open flame. The aroma of roasted marshmallows and the crackling of the campfire brought back a sense of nostalgia that warmed our hearts. We opened a bottle of wine and laughed as we shared stories of our college days, reminiscing about the carefree moments we had once enjoyed. As the night wore on, we decided to spend the night in our car. Just for old time's sake, we folded down the back seats, laid out some blankets, and snuggled together, listening to the sounds of the forest outside. In the dimly lit car, I felt a sense of contentment wash over me, but it was short-lived. Abruptly, the tranquility of the night shattered. Someone knocked on the car door from Kathy's side. Panic coursed through our veins. Darkness shrouded the woods, and the digital clock on the dashboard read 2:30 in the morning. I could hear the distinct sound of someone moving around outside the car, their steps soft but unmistakable on the fallen leaves. Kathy gasped, clutching my arm, her fingers trembling. I whispered for her to stay still as my heart pounded in my chest like a drum. The intruder outside began to rattle the locked car door, desperate to gain access. My breath hitched, and I silently prayed that they would leave us alone. We sat frozen in the darkness, our eyes adjusting to the dim moonlight filtering through the trees. The person outside continued their relentless assault on our car, pounding on the windows and trying to peer inside. Kathy's voice trembled as she whispered, "What do we do?" I whispered back, "We wait. Hopefully, they'll give up and leave." But the intruder showed no signs of relenting. They circled the car, their footsteps a sinister dance of malevolence. The sounds of their fingers scraping along the windows sent shivers down our spines. Time became a blur, but eventually, the footsteps retreated into the depths of the forest. We dared not move or make a sound, fearing that they might return. The night stretched on, and eventually, the first light of dawn began to break through the trees. With the morning light came a sense of relief, but also dread. We cautiously emerged from the car and surveyed the area. The ground around us bore witness to the intruder's presence footprints that circled our vehicle, clear signs that someone had been trying to peer into the back of the car. In one horrifying detail, we noticed that the person had dragged their finger across the dust and grime on the windows, leaving a long, ghastly streak from one end of the car to the other. We packed up our campsite hastily, leaving behind the serenity we had sought and driving away from the mountainside campsite as quickly as our rattled nerves could manage. The memories of that night would forever haunt us. A stark reminder that sometimes the wilderness can be a place of beauty and wonder, but it can also hide the darkest of secrets and the most unsettling of encounters. I had always been drawn to the mysteries of the natural world, so when I found an opportunity to camp in an ancient forest, I couldn't resist. The campground was nestled deep within the woods, far from the comforts of civilization. As I parked my van and set up my campsite, I marveled at the towering trees that surrounded me, their branches stretching toward the darkening sky. The sun was setting, casting long, eerie shadows through the forest. I decided to start a fire and prepare some dinner before the darkness fully enveloped the forest. The crackling flames provided a sense of comfort as I cooked my meal, the scent of the forest mixing with the aroma of food. I savored each bite as the stars began to twinkle overhead. As the night settled in, I crawled into my sleeping bag inside the van, gazing out at the forest through the window. The silence of the ancient woods was deafening, and the darkness was almost palpable. I felt a shiver run down my spine, but I brushed it off as a natural reaction to the eerie atmosphere. I closed my eyes and tried to drift off to sleep, but something terrible soon jolted me awake. In the stillness of the night, I heard a woman's piercing scream echoing through the forest. It was a haunting sound, a mixture of sheer terror and unbearable pain. I sat up in my sleeping bag, heart pounding in my chest. My mind raced, trying to rationalize the source of the scream. Perhaps it was just a wild animal, I thought, though it sounded far too human. The scream continued, rising and falling in an eerie cadence that sent chills down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong out there in the dark. Ancient forest. Unable to ignore it any longer, I grabbed my flashlight and cautiously stepped out of the van. The forest was thick with shadows, and the beam of light from my flashlight only pierced a small fraction of the darkness. I strained my ears, trying to locate the source of the screams. The sounds seemed to be coming from deeper within the forest, away from the campground. With a mixture of fear and curiosity, I ventured further into the trees, my flashlight trembling in my trembling hand. Every step felt like an eternity, each rustle of leaves an ominous omen. As I moved deeper into the forest, the screams grew louder and more unsettling. It was as though the very woods themselves were echoing with the agony of an unseen presence. The chilling mixture of pleasure and pain in those cries sent shivers down my spine, and I began to question my decision to investigate. What could possibly be happening in the heart of this ancient forest in the middle of the night? The answer eluded me as I pressed forward, my heart pounding in my chest. The darkness closed in around me, and the chilling cries of the woman continued to fill the night, leaving me with an unsettling sense of dread and an unshakable desire to uncover the source of this haunting mystery. I was terrified and hastily retreated to my pickup truck. My hands were trembling as I fumbled for my phone, dialing 911 to call the police. I relayed the bone-chilling screams and my location in the ancient forest, desperation creeping into my voice. The dispatcher assured me help was on the way. It wasn't long before the flashing lights of a police car pierced through the darkness, and two officers emerged, their faces etched with skepticism. As they listened to my account, they grabbed their flashlights and followed me into the forest. But as we searched, we found no signs of struggle, no clues, and certainly no trace of the woman who'd been screaming. As we scoured the area, the officers discovered a solitary hair rubber band on the forest floor. They examined it carefully, their expressions growing more perplexed by the minute. But beyond that small, inconclusive piece of evidence, the forest remained an enigma. Hours turned into days, and despite their efforts, the police found no more substantial leads. There were no missing persons reports filed, no evidence of any crime or disturbance. It was as if the forest had swallowed the woman's cries, leaving behind only a lingering sense of dread. Reluctantly, the officers left, advising me to contact them immediately if I heard anything else. I watched their taillights disappear into the night, feeling abandoned and bewildered by the forest's silent secrets. I never did find out what had happened that night in the ancient forest, and the unsettling memory of those screams haunted my dreams for years to come. It was a chilling reminder that the natural world could hold mysteries beyond our comprehension, and that sometimes the darkness concealed secrets that were never meant to be uncovered. It was a crisp, autumn morning, and I found myself alone at a remote campsite deep in the woods. The day had been filled with adventure and exploration, but as night fell, fatigue overwhelmed me, and I retreated to the shelter of my tent, nestled beneath the tall trees. The forest was eerily quiet that night, and the only sound was the occasional rustling of leaves in the cool breeze. I had just settled into my sleeping bag, the tent bathed in the soft glow of the full moon outside. It was the kind of night that makes you feel both small and connected to the vast, mysterious universe. But then, in the dead of night. I awoke abruptly. My heart pounded, and a sense of foreboding hung heavy in the air. I strained my ears, trying to discern what had disturbed my slumber. And then I heard a faint shuffling sound, like someone or something moving stealthily just outside my tent. Panic welled up within me as I realized that I wasn't alone. I couldn't see anything, just the silhouette of the trees in the moonlight. Summoning all the courage I had, I mustered a shaky voice and called out, "Who's there?" The shuffling stopped abruptly, and for a moment, silence reigned. Then, without warning, a shadowy figure moved into view, standing just outside the tent, illuminated by the moonlight. My heart raced, and I shouted again, "Who are you?" The intruder didn't respond, and fear gripped me like a vice. Without hesitation, I unzipped the tent and sprang out, my flashlight clenched tightly in my trembling hand. I gave chase through the underbrush, my breath ragged as I pursued the shadowy figure. Branches scratched at my skin, and my mind raced with thoughts of who this person could be and what their intentions were. Finally, I managed to catch up to the intruder. It was a man, disheveled and wild-eyed. He stank of alcohol and desperation. He turned to face me, his trembling hands raised in a feeble attempt to ward me off. Desperation filled his eyes as he stammered, "I didn't mean no harm, man. I was just looking for something, anything." It was then that I realized he was a junkie, lost and desperate in the wilderness. I held him there until the authorities arrived, the cold night air biting into my skin. The police took the man into custody, and as they led him away, he cast one final haunting glance in my direction. As I returned to my tent, adrenaline still coursing through my veins, I couldn't help but reflect on the dangers that lurked even in the most serene and remote places. I had narrowly escaped a potentially perilous situation, a stark reminder that safety could never be taken for granted. So, as I settled back into my sleeping bag, I whispered a silent prayer of gratitude for my narrow escape. And as the moon cast its soothing light upon the forest once more, I knew that I would always be more vigilant, more cautious, when venturing far from the comforts of home, especially in the stillness of an autumn night.